Can trust exist without truth? In this episode, we'll explore how truth forms the foundation of trust and why honesty is essential for meaningful relationships, leadership, and alignment with light. Hello and welcome to the New Ashla podcast. Today we continue the series inspired by the book, The Light Within, A Journey Through the Axioms of Ashla. I am your host and author of The Light Within, Justin Gates. Today I'm joined by Michael.
Hello.
I trust we're doing
You know it.
because that's the truth and I trust you. See how we played that in there? The show today is centered around the axiom of light. Without truth, there is no trust. This axiom teaches that truth and trust are inseparable. Without truth, trust crumbles, leaving relationships and pretty much everything else in your life that requires connection with others unstable. Upholding truth ensures integrity, stability, and connection. Trust is a delicate and essential component of human interactions. It's a foundation upon which personal and societal relationships are built. Trust is nurtured by honesty, transparency, and the consistent alignment of words and actions. When we align with the truth, we create an atmosphere of trust where meaningful and authentic connections can thrive.
And there's so much truth to that. Trust is such a vital component to any relationship as well as truth. I mean, so many of us get lost in our insecurities and start penting things up, but without that communication, without that honesty and conviction behind trying to be authentic with those we care about, it's almost non-existent the way we show up because we end up not being our authentic selves around those we care about.
Right. And if things start out that way, if things start out with truth, without honesty, transparency, they tend to crumble pretty quick. Now, people can pretend for a good amount of time. People can pretend and they can put on a good show, but it doesn't tend to last very long. Things start to unravel and things start to fall apart. And you start seeing kind of, the sneaky and shadowy side of somebody, especially when they start out untruthful, untrustworthy, these kinds of things.
It's so true. I mean, I think back to the journey I've been on and the way I've shown up in many places and the people I've had in my lives and the quiet conversations that needed to happen that never happened. And in my current relationship, I mean, going into it, having communication, having total transparency of who we were has created such a foundation for building a strong, lasting relationship where there is constant communication and understanding and just unconditional love.
Yeah, it's very important to be as authentic as you can from day one. That way you can start building trust, and trust does take time to build. Now, there's basic trust. I trust that you won't hurt me. I trust that, you're probably not going to destroy my life first time we meet. But if it's not built authentically, if you're not authentic on day one, then, and especially if you have ulterior motives, those are going to show. I don't care how good of a con man you are, or con woman, or con artist will say, it will show, especially if you don't inject truth into what you're saying, not half-truths, the truth. Truth as the foundation of trust. Trust is built on transparency, as we've been talking about, and honesty, allowing individuals to rely on one another without the fear of deception. Truth fosters security and stability and respect, while lies create doubt, division, and chaos. It's kind of tough, right, to know if someone's, not bullcrapping you on day one. It's kind of tough. And we all should be kind of on the lookout for that. Trust but verify. Give them that basic trust, that basic chance to show them that they are trustworthy, right?
When it's crazy how you can build trust with people. I think one of the biggest issues we see in society now is trust is so freely given without conceptualizing or learning about the other person. And trust can be broken so easily if truth is not present in that relationship, whatever that may be.
Yeah. Have you ever noticed, and this has happened to me, and I'm sure it's happened to everyone listening to this at one time or the other, but haven't you noticed how when someone is authentic and someone is genuine and you do trust them because they are consistent with their words and actions, things like this, right? How hard it is to hold a grudge against them, how hard it is to hold any ill will towards them for a long period of time, because that trust had been built and it was solid and it was genuine. But when you go through a relationship with somebody, and it doesn't even have to be a romantic one, it could be a business relationship or a friendship or even relationships with family. If you kind of have red flags there and you kind of have an idea that, oh, that doesn't sound right, or if someone isn't true to the word a lot, or someone breaks their word a lot, or someone doesn't always act in accordance with their words, when that trust breaks, it breaks hard, right?
Yeah. And it can be so devastating. I mean, when it comes to relationships, I've come to view this as when we have a relationship with anyone, we have a relationship with two people, who the person is and who they are in our minds. And the more consistent you can get that, the easier it'll be. But when you have those distortions that do not align with who that person is in your mind, it can create confusion and chaos.
Yeah. And another thing I'll say, it's like when somebody that truly has earned your trust and they slip up and they make mistakes, as we all do.
Amen.
You don't tend to look back at the whole of your relationship and go, "Oh my God, I should have seen that. I should have seen that months ago, or I should have seen that years ago," or because you come to realize that, well, they just slipped up. And when you have someone's trust and you do make a mistake and you're going to, it's much easier to recover from that if you were consistent, if you were authentic, if you were transparent and honest, versus if you weren't those things and something finally gives. They're going to look back and say, I should have seen this coming. I should have known. And I did know. My gut was telling me, my intuition was telling me. I was dreaming about it all the time and I ignored it, ignored it, ignored it, right? Does that make sense to you?
Oh yeah. No, I've run into that myself. I know I had someone I cared deeply about that I was helping out because they were going through a hard time. And I knew I never had the full picture. And in the beginning, my intuition was telling me something is not right here. And I ignored it. I shoved it down. And in the end, things were not right. And I think one of the biggest takeaways we can have with that, just what you're saying there, is I mean, our intuition is one of our strongest assets. To learn to hone and utilize it, to listen to it and follow it, it's so important because we so many of us shove it down trying to ignore the warning signs because we want to see this person in this light or on this pedestal.
Yeah. And I've had both. I've had plenty of both in my life as a practice. I tend to,
Oh, yeah, I
even
believe it.
now, I meet someone new or I have someone new that comes into my life that I have to work with or whatever the case may be. I always give them the benefit of the doubt. I give them the basic trust, but I verify everything. I verify everything. I don't just, because trust is earned over time with repetition. So let's talk about discipline, the discipline of living in truth, which can be difficult. It's one of those things that it's just like all the other things we talk about here. Every virtue we talk about, every pillar we talk about, every single one of these axioms, all of the precepts of knighthood, the rules of engagement, whatever it is, everything is a practice. And it doesn't matter how long you've been on this path. I've been on this path for a really long time, well over 20 years now. I've taught tons and tons of students. I have mentored under tons and tons of teachers. And the one thing I will tell you that you never stop practicing because you don't always get it right every day. That's why we call our virtues agreements. And we'll get into the agreements in another episode, I'm sure. But the agreements, the axioms, all these must be practiced. So practicing the discipline of living in truth, it's really important that we commit to truth. And we try to commit to this every day. We practice, we get up, and we commit to truth, not just in our words, but in our actions. And we commit each day to demonstrating consistency and integrity. You've been on this path for about a year and a half, 2 years now. Have you stopped practicing anything?
No, every time I learn something new, it's about incorporating. I will say a lot of lessons took time to cultivate the ability to have them as a part of me, and then some lessons I needed to come back to later. But it's something that was cultivated. And one of the most important parts, I think, for anyone listening is if you're not someone who lives your truth, it's important to develop this skill, but also be patient with yourself because when you are used to wearing masks around the people you care about, when you're used to hiding your feelings, who you are, it takes time and patience and grace that you need to give yourself as you learn to become fully authentic. There was a study done that they talk about how you look at people with animals, and how when we have animals, we can be around animals all the time. No matter how introverted you are, you can be around your animal whenever. Why is that? Because you can be fully authentic and 100% yourself around your animal. The beauty within all of us is authenticity and showing up as who we are at any given day, whether that's not a good place or a good place, whatever it is. The more authentic we can show up, the more we can interact with the world in a way that we would never imagine. Another important topic around this, I read this book last year called Radical Honesty. And it talked about how the voice in our heads that constantly chitters in our ear and tells us all these things all stems from a place of repressed expression. And the more we learn to speak our minds, the more we learn to have conversations and get things on the table, the greater we can lessen that voice and find self compassion as well as compassion with others. We're so afraid of being seen for these horrible people. And in the end, we all have our issues, and everyone wants to accept everyone. It's just about breaching that line.
Well, and that voice is not a good dude sometimes. That's where our judgment comes from. It judges the hell out of us over and over again. In the Four Agreements, that's one of the main themes of that book. If you're the last person on earth who hasn't read that book out there, you probably should. It's a fast read and an even faster listen on Audible, and it's cheap. And they should hand that book out at birth, honestly, because I would have skipped a
Amen.
lot. I would have skipped a lot of turmoil had I got that book at birth. I probably wouldn't have understood it, but if we had it, the judge, and that voice is very judgy. And it's not just judgy, but it will judge you for the same thing over and over and over again. You'll never get out of that prison if you don't stand up to your judge and get to the point where outside judgment doesn't bother you either. I mean, I'm sure people say lots of things about me that I don't know, and that stuff is none of my business. If they're not saying it to me, it's none of my business. It doesn't even calculate any of my energy. So courage comes in.
There's a book I'm reading currently called The Courage to Be Disliked. And it is such a
Mm-hmm.
fascinating book. It talks about how trauma, how all these issues we have in life that weigh on us and everything don't really exist. All issues are interpersonal issues.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
man, it's like reading that. It took me a minute to absorb, but it's like there's a grain of truth to that. The judginess we feel, the fear we
Mm-hmm.
feel, all things stem from an external locus of control. And it's all about creating that internal locus of control where the only thing that matters is you and what you have control over, and anything else that could try to breach that type of peace.
Yeah. Well, and a lot of that can be solved with erecting very, very strong boundaries around yourself, which I think is probably the crux of many people's issues out there. But no one ever taught them how to create boundaries because the way they were raised, maybe, and I'm not beating up on anybody's parents or my own. Parents, typically, good parents, most parents do the best they can because nobody taught them very well either. And they just had to figure it out. I
Hey, I'm
even,
one of those, man. I just started learning how to make boundaries, and that's been a couple years, and I'm still struggling deeply with that. But it is such an important skill to cultivate, and many people I don't even think really understand what the term boundaries mean. We live in such an enmeshed world.
yeah, it's difficult in today's world because, and I might get some hate for this or some backlash for this, but we have on a large scale replaced truth with feelings, truth with opinions, truth with untruth. And look, the fact is, I won't, and you can vouch for this, and you have spoke to my wife about this, who's known me for well over 20 years. I don't give my opinion on anything. I don't give an opinion because an opinion, in my estimation, is a judgment in disguise. So I don't give opinions because I try my best not to judge people, not to judge situations, even if they affect me negatively on an emotional level. I just don't give opinions. And I trust my feelings and I read my feelings, but I don't let them dictate all of my choices or words because to me, truth is above all things. Now, that doesn't mean that you use the truth to be mean or hateful. Well, it's the truth. I'm sorry it hurt you. We can do better. And on this path that we teach, we are expected to do better. We should try and be as impeccable as we can. And that kind of brings us to
No, it's so true.
this brings us to our next one because we're talking about where courage enters. Courage is required. Confidence is required to tell difficult truths sometimes. And we should be as impeccable as possible. Sometimes we can't. Sometimes it's just the situation calls for an uncomfortable truth. But we should never get to a point where we are willing to not display truth and not display integrity and transparency for the sake of feelings. Be as impeccable as you can, but have the courage to share the truth. It gets to a point where you can barely speak in it and you're afraid of what's going to happen or what the other person's going to say. You have to get to the point where courage and confidence are the tools you use to fortify yourself and allow you to speak the truth and demonstrate the truth. Listen, everything we say here on this podcast, everything we say is something that is both said but also demonstrated. It's something that you can attest to since you became my student a couple of years ago, is that everything we talk about, you and I, and everything I share with you, and everything we share back and forth along this path, not only do I expect you to understand the words and know how to speak the words from your perspective, but I also expect you to demonstrate, do I not?
Yeah, 100%. And it's cultivating the skills, but in those conversations, I mean, the beauty in this is when you have the dialogue open where you can talk about these things and you feel that confidence that you can have a conversation and speak truth. It's okay to challenge one another. It's okay to bring up opposition even to philosophies because that creates debate, it creates discussion, and that creates a whole new level of wisdom.
It creates truth. It's something you can demonstrate. It's
Yes,
something that you can say, right? Now, the subjective and objective nature of truth will be philosophized and discussed and debated and forever and ever and ever and ever. And we won't get into that today because we have other axioms that kind of point to that we'll talk about then. But for the most part, the truth that we're talking about is that basic truth. Uh, when we say truth, we're talking to not using deceit, not using negative manipulation on somebody, and that requires and we were just talking about boundaries. We were talking about courage and confidence. Those things are necessary for you to be able to stand up to people, and especially the ones you love and the ones you do trust, sharing with them a truth that they either are ignorant to. Those are usually the easiest truths. If someone's ignorant to a truth and they're willing to and open to learn, those are usually the easiest ones to share. But if someone is holding to a position and holding to an idea or holding on to an opinion, which again is just a judgment in disguise, those are when those tough conversations come. And so we have to commit to this stuff every day. And it starts over every day. If we drop the ball today, well, tomorrow when we wake up, it's a whole nother chance to start over and a whole nother chance to be truthful and to live in truth and demonstrate truth. I want to kind of compare this to sunlight. Truth is like sunlight. It illuminates, it nourishes, and reveals things. And when you try to hide from it, it only deepens shadows. The more you hide from truth, the deeper into the deception you go. The more you ignore the truth. If you're getting feelings and something just doesn't seem right with somebody that you love and trust or somebody you're getting to know, the more you hide from those feelings, the more you hide from that truth, ultimately just puts you into a deeper set of shadow, right?
that is such a good analogy. I've never thought about it like that. I mean, one thing I've been studying, I'm in school right now for psychology, and they talk about the ego and the superego, and it's crazy how the more people get stuck in their shadows, the more the shadow ends up projecting it on the world, this hatred, which is actually an internal hatred from truths that people have hidden from themselves. I'm going into a tangent there, but your analogy there was just so beautiful because it's the truth. The light will shine and show so much, but in the shadows, they only grow.
And eventually, the more the truth is shown in a relationship, eventually you run out of shadow to hide from, and then you're exposed. And that's, when these situations, when these relationships go sideways, that's usually what happens. Too much light, too much shining on the deeds that someone has, or the words that don't align to actions. Eventually those show, and there is no hiding from it anymore. Now, it takes longer for some, and sometimes it happens pretty quickly. Truth as
Yeah.
protection. We're going to talk about truth as protection against chaos. Truth has a way of stabilizing you. Truth has a way of bringing you closer to balance, to harmony with a relationship, a situation, whatever the case may be. It acts as a stabilizer during conflict because it provides clarity and it shows you a direction, while lies and deceit just breed confusion, and they breed disharmony and disorder. Now, those of us who follow a path of light, doesn't necessarily have to be of Ashla, but balance and harmony are central to those paths. And if you don't adhere to that, then you're going to lead yourself down a road. Or if you're allowing someone in a relationship to you, or you're allowing somebody in some kind of situation that's happening, if you allow them to lead you with lies, you're just going to become more confused. Everything's going to be out of balance and disharmonious, because truth aligns us with the light. And that allows trust to flourish over time, naturally. And eventually you get to a point where you don't have a fear of betrayal.
I think very often when it comes to boundaries, it is easy to get walled off for a lot of people. I mean, I'm coming to realize there are two sides of a spectrum, and the goal is to become assertive, is what the idealized version of what we want to become is. We either fall on two sides of things, and one is either aggressive, strong standing. Usually, when it comes to that personality type, they have rigid, strong, wall like boundaries when it comes to what people can and cannot do and what they will tolerate. And then you have people on the other side of the spectrum, like me, where I heard this analogy that was great. It's like lines in a pool where they just have to swim right under it, and they're just so flexible and maneuverable to get around. And it's about finding that middle ground where you can have those hard conversations and, depending on how much you care about someone, redevelop that trust. No one is beyond saving. There was a quote you told me a long time ago, and it's escaping me. And I think it was right around those lines, though, of no one is beyond redemption, no matter how far into the dark they go. But it's about them wanting to reclaim, I guess, their honor is the best way I can phrase it, to encompass everything, but values, trust, relationships.
That's actually an axiom of light. No one is beyond redemption.
That's why I remember it so well. Okay.
That's why it's like wiggled into your brain, like a worm went into your brain. It's like it's there forever.
That's an understatement.
It's big, because I beat you guys to death with these axioms. I really do, with a smile on my face, even. And no, I'm not
It's
a
the truth.
I'm not a sociopath. They're just that important. The axioms of Ashla contain the entirety of the Ashla philosophy locked away in there in little tiny bites. And it's only after you get through the axioms and you get through the teachings, and then once you get on the other side of the teachings, you go, I could have learned the whole philosophy just by learning the axioms. It's hard to see that at first, but once you get there, then it's like, oh yeah, duh, they're right there. That's why I beat you guys to death with these. Everything we've talked about today comes from the Ashla teaching that light reveals truth. And walking in alignment with the light means living authentically and fearlessly in honesty. And really, because truth dispels ignorance, right? Ignorance, yet knowledge. One line of our code. Truth dispels ignorance and restores harmony. This enables trust to take root in a situation, more so in a relationship, though. I mean, situations are often kind of fast. It's hard to build trust in a relationship, or I'm sorry, in a situation, unless you already have established that trust, which a lot of that is in different axioms that we'll get to eventually. But it dispels ignorance, it restores harmony, and it enables trust to take root. And I would encourage all of you, in all of your dealings with others and yourself, especially yourself. Let's just start there, really. Let honesty and transparency be your guiding stars, for it is through the unwavering commitment to truth that bonds of trust are forged and maintained. Nurture this sacred bond, for it is the cornerstone of harmonious connections and the currency of the noblest interactions. I got another metaphor for you. You ready? You're probably going to like this one too. I like to teach a metaphor, don't I? Another metaphor is, I kind of alluded to it earlier, using truth and comparing it to a compass, because it always points us toward alignment with light, and it will guide us safely even in uncertainty. Are we ready for the exercise for today?
I do got one more
Everybody's
thing
ready?
I want to throw in there. I listened to a podcast a couple weeks ago on the Huberman Lab, and he had an interview with Martha Beck, who had a come to God moment in the middle of a surgery. And she's one of these big advocates for authentic living. And she had a challenge that if you want to start learning how to be authentic and to show up in the world in such a way, then you got to make a deal with yourself that you will tell no more lies. And that sounds crazy because we lie. That is human nature. Little lies, small things, even jokingly. But to not lie to anyone, most importantly, not lie to yourself. So if anything, it's something to try practicing. If you're trying to develop that, just start with yourself. What areas are you not being honest with yourself in? Because it's in those areas are you going to find liberation, freedom, and your true self.
Yeah. Practice, 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 practice.
Amen.
We're going to say it a lot. You're going to hear it a lot. Practice, practice everything. My old co-host and longtime friend and brother, back in the old Knights of Awakening days, David Edge, he was always fond of saying, the greatest lie ever told is the one we tell ourselves. Problem with telling lies to ourselves, or anything negative really, is that we are going to start saying it, and then we're just going to start thinking it, and then it fades away into our subconscious, and then it's just 80,000 times a day. You're just lying to yourself over and over again. So yes, practice honesty. Practice honesty with yourself. Start there. That's good advice. And practice honesty, practice honesty, practice honesty. You'll have a good 3-day streak, and then you'll screw it up in the fourth, but don't judge yourselves too harshly. We're not meant to be perfect. And this podcast will never make you perfect. I'll never make you perfect because I'll never be perfect. So best we could do is show up every day and do the best we can and practice, practice, practice. All right, let's share our exercise for the day. We're going to call this one the truth in action practice. Step 1, assess your words and actions. Reflect on a recent interaction or decision. And this is what I want you to write down. 1, was I completely truthful in this situation? Did I withhold information or distort the truth? And if so, why? So this requires some honesty. Step 2, and this is right in line with what you were talking about, Michael, what that lady said on the podcast. Step 2, commit to honesty. Commit to honesty. Practice, practice, practice. Commit to honesty. If dishonesty or avoidance played a role, take one step to clarify, to correct or speak the truth moving forward. Start small, pick one thing. And as Michael advised us, start with the self. That way you can kind of keep it in-house and practice there. Practice where you're safe. You should be safe with yourself. And if you don't feel safe with yourself, you got a lot of introspection you need to do. Step 3, build trust through transparency. Practice truthfulness in both small and significant moments, ensuring consistency and openness in all interactions. Do you have anything to add to the exercise?
I got something to add for the whole, and it's about practice. When it comes to practicing skills that we are foreign to or that we struggle with, I look at all of these things as almost being like an infant learning to crawl. And the infant must first learn to crawl, and then to stand, and then to walk. And then eventually he will learn to run. Be patient with yourself. Give yourself grace. And don't give up. The more you practice, the stronger you will become. I guarantee it.
Yep. Yep. And I'll also say this, it's not a race. You're not in competition with anyone. And even if it was a race, it wouldn't be a fair one, because we all, depending on how you believe, I'm just going to say it this way, and you're just going to assume how I believe, and that's fine. It's not a race. And if it were, it would not be a fair one, because we all start at different points along the track. Some of us closer to the finish line, the quote unquote finish line. There is no end, by the way. but quote unquote finish line, and some of us start way beyond, way far away. So don't ever compete with anybody on who could be the most honest or most truthful. Just be truthful. Just be honest. Do your best. Don't judge yourself to death. And don't let anyone else judge you either. Our affirmation for the day: I walk in truth, knowing that trust follows honesty. My actions and words reflect integrity, creating connections grounded in light. Our journaling prompt. I always encourage you, every time you're going to get sick of hearing me say this, I encourage you to journal, 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 always and forever. But you should have a journal. And our prompt for the day is: reflect on a time when telling the truth, no matter how difficult, strengthened trust. What did the experience teach you about the connection between honesty and integrity? And if that doesn't apply to you, then go out and create that. Go out and do that, and then reflect on it. It's now time for question of the day. I hope you're ready, Michael. I'm going to share a question with you that will also encourage our listeners to engage in. Our question of the day is: have you experienced the power of truth restoring trust, or the pain of deception breaking it?
I have experienced both. I had a really rough relationship for a couple years, and there was a lot of dishonesty that was going on, and intuitively I picked up on it. And once that honesty came to the surface, kind of like what you were talking about earlier, there was a lot of friction. But over time, that trust was recultivated. It took a year or two before I really got to a place where I felt safe within the relationship. But trust was rebuilt through the honesty that was provided in that relationship and the transparency. And in turn, I've also had it happen where there was someone I trusted with everything I had so much respect for, who took a wrong path in life, and his life blew up, and he wanted to hide his shame and everything he was going through. And through the lies, I started distancing myself because I knew the authenticity wasn't there. And again, no one is beyond redemption, but until they get out of that place of running from themselves and their problems, we can't save people. We can hold a hand up when they're ready to get off the ground, but until then, I had to learn that you gotta give room for them to go through their own healing journey. And man, it was a hard blow because it was someone I've trusted my entire life, who I always thought had open and honest communication with me and let me know when things were dark or things were going amiss. And once things got to a head, there wasn't communication there that allowed any type of conversation to help things go smoother or to help the situation.
I throw this question out to you guys in the audience. Have you experienced the power of truth restoring trust, or the pain of deception breaking it? Share your story with us using the hashtag truth and trust. Before we go today, I want to encourage you guys to practice that truth in action exercise. That way, if you don't have any experience in what we're talking about today, you can start building that experience, and you can start seeing kind of how things relate to each other, and try to find a little more balance and harmony. And I'm always going to suggest for all of you out there to back to your communities, go back to your groups, your pages, wherever you share, to form a discussion around this topic today. Share your reflections with each other and your challenges and rewards of speaking truthfully and building trust in personal and professional settings in your relationships. Mike, before we go, you have a counseling, or I'm sorry, not a counseling, but a coaching. You have a coaching.
Okay. Yeah, as a side gig, I do trauma and relationship coaching. I have been practicing this for a couple years after going through my own trials and tribulations, and now cultivating a healthy and wonderful relationship. I've started helping other people do the same, working on their inner demons. I practice mainly in shadow work, inner child work, and restoring when it comes to trauma. And then I assist relationships in creating better communication and authenticity so that they can thrive together as a unit instead of separate people.
Did you share with them how they can get in contact with you if they want to learn more?
So currently, I am working on a website which will be lightinwithinthevoid.org. I have not launched the website yet, but you are welcome to reach out to me at Perry, Perry, dot Michael at iCloud.com. Thank you.
So as we wrap this up today, I hope this episode has inspired you to see truth as the foundation of trust. And I hope that it reminds you that honesty creates stability, respect, and alignment with the light, with balance, and with harmony. Through this approach, we learn that truth is not only a moral principle, but also a source of strength, illuminating the path forward and ensuring trust endures in all of your dealings. Thank you so much for joining us. We really do appreciate it. And until next time, ad Lucem.
Not Lucem.